Larry, we may be avoiding the wrath of Hurricane Florence, but if you have an airline ticket to fly anywhere south of here, you're probably trying to figure out a travel alternative.
We are joined by Seth Kaplan of Airline Weekly to see how this storm can impact us and what we can do to save our trips. We don't, like we said, if you're flying south or you might not be able to go around the storm, might not be able to go through. So what's kind of the biggest just interruptions we see when something like this happens?
Well, in this case, if you look at where that storm's headed, Charlotte, a giant hub for American Airlines. Guess what's the biggest airline at Reagan National? American. I think a lot of us who have flown American somewhere else have connected in Charlotte. Happens to be, in terms of the percentage of passengers who are connecting, one of the busiest hubs of all. So even if you're here and the weather's okay, you're going somewhere else where the weather's okay, you might be impacted by that. Some smaller airports already closed. Yeah, absolutely, across the airline system.
Wow.
Now, we have a lot of people in town for conferences. They could possibly get stuck if the conference ends at the height of the storm, if they're flying south. So what are their options as far as getting home?
Help the airline help you. Be proactive. Be creative. I mean, look, my in-laws are flying up tomorrow, or they're supposed to anyway, from Fort Lauderdale. They're booked into Reagan National. So, two places where the weather should be okay, but look, things can go wrong. And the first thing I'm going to tell them, if their flight is canceled and the airline, they're on Southwest tomorrow, they're going to say, you know what, we don't have that many flights to Reagan. I'm going to tell them, ask the airline, well, what about BWI? Because I happen to know they have a bunch of flights there. So that's really one of the best pieces of advice. Tell the airline how flexible you are. They're going to look for that next seat on the same route. But if you don't mind using a different airport, you don't mind connecting somewhere else, tell the airline that, because they won't assume it.
So if it's not an issue of necessarily the flight through the storm, but it's just kind of been impacted because of the storm, you could still get to another airport, still get to something.
Exactly, and we'll see. I mean, this storm, even as it weakens, as we've heard during the news segment, it's also growing. So, the impact in airline terms, from an airline perspective, it doesn't matter whether a storm is spinning at 130 miles an hour or 110. You're not flying anywhere near that. So the impact on the air travel system could actually grow. Let's keep our eyes on Atlanta, the world's busiest airport. Depending on what happens next, there could be some effects there.
Interesting. Now, for people who are just feeling like, you know what, I have to catch a plane and then to a different city and then drive to my destination, are the airlines offering any cancellation amenities for people? Are they going to be sleeping in the airport or just out of money as a result of this storm?
Well, the good news nowadays is that you have fewer people stuck sleeping in the airport. Now, it's a trade-off. It's not all good news. It used to be that airlines just sort of tried to fly as long as it was safe to fly, and then the storm rolled in and everything was just kind of stuck where it was. You might remember there's awful accounts of people stuck on planes away from the gate without food and water and overflowing toilets and all the rest of it. The government began fining airlines when that happened, and so now what they do is they're more likely to just say, you know what, we're going to proactively cancel a whole bunch of flights to avoid the possibility of that happening. So what that does is it actually inconveniences more people, because they end up canceling flights that maybe in the end didn't need to be canceled. But on the other hand, you usually don't end up stuck on the floor of an airport as much as you used to.
Because that's happened to me, and it's a horrible experience, sleeping on your luggage.
The worst.
Well, and you think now, I mean, we're talking the hurricane, but we've got snow season coming up and everything coming up. So, is there any strength in calling and kind of being like, hey, can you put me up? I mean, what is your experience with the way airlines are to help in those situations?
Well, usually when it's purely weather related, they're going to say, look, we'll do what we can in terms of getting you a seat, but we're not going to do anything else. When there's something else, mechanical cancellation, something that's the airline's fault, that's when they'll tend to do more for you. Don't be afraid to ask. Some of those agents, they can give you even something as simple as a meal voucher in the airport to buy yourself some lunch. But again, not when it's just a weather-related cancellation. But you're right. I mean, these same tips, whatever the situation is, even routine bad weather, they always help. Also, I mean, look, have the airline app, have all of the technology, as you said, call them, whatever you can do to get through to them. On the other hand, keep a paper copy of your itinerary, because sometimes when things go wrong, they can go really wrong. And if there's a problem with the airline system, it helps to be able to say, hey, here's this paper. It says I'm supposed to be on this flight.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Seth Kaplan, thank you so much. Airline Weekly, he's saying be your own advocate and be proactive. We'll be back with more Great Day after this. Thank you.